All right, welcome back to the show. My name is Israel Solomon. I'm a visual artist located in Indianapolis, Indiana. And today I am finishing up a painting that I started recently for a show that I have coming up, a solo art show titled Oasis. And this is just one of the many still lifes that I'm going to have represented in the show that I've been working on. And really, the still lives that I've been creating are more so a metaphor for having and being blessed and counting your blessings. When you're talking about bowls, pitchers, pots, I start thinking about what would be inside of those things. Something that's nourishing, a plant, something that's living and thriving. So that's sort of the metaphor that I've got going on with these still lives that I've been creating. This video is probably about 12, 13 minutes long, but the time that passed while I was working was more like 45-ish, close to an hour. And I thought it was important for me to say that because my process of creating is not super fast. I'm not the type of artist that can have a canvas in front of them and create a painting in just, an hour, 45 minutes, 2 or 3 hours. What I do really takes time, and I like to focus in on things and make every single inch of the surface that I'm working on just as important as every other inch. So I want everything to be fully developed from top to bottom, and I want every corner of the painting to be interesting and to have its own little story. So that's really what I'm doing right now as I'm working. I am utilizing some whiter tones with a little bit of red inside of them to just highlight some areas in different spots on the canvas and to just really flesh things out and finish things out. So again, the way that I work is very process driven, and I work in layers. So because of that, I often have several paintings going at once. Working in oils and layers allows me to work on several things at once as opposed to focusing in on just one thing. If I were to just focus in on one painting at a time, it would be an even slower process because with oils, even with the mediums that I use, it still takes time for them to dry enough on the surface to where I can go over them and layer without it becoming muddy. When you're layering oil paints, if you are layering the paint wet on wet with a different color, a lot of times you're going to find yourself with an oily, muddy kind of color that is just not developing. So when I layer like this, I have to allow the paint to dry a little bit in order to go on top of it again, so I don't create that mud that I'm talking about, because I want my colors to be extremely vibrant. And one thing about oil paints is you can get some extremely rich and vibrant colors from them if you take your time and really focus in on doing it the right way. So it's very important to learn what works best for you in regards to your style and your approach. Right now I'm working on that stove that's in the background of the still life, and I said this in a previous video, I believe, that I was working on this painting. This is based on the kitchen that I grew up in when I was a kid. We had these like greenish yellow walls, and I wanted to capture that time frame, and I wanted to capture a moment. And for the sake of the composition, I switched some things around in the kitchen. I changed some things up, but that's that artistic ability that we have to manipulate and to change and to merge things together. Sometimes when I'm creating a painting or a composition, I might merge multiple instances together into one composition. So, you know, I might have a moment that happened in 1998 merged in with a moment that happened in 1995 together into one composition because it's representative of a specific time in my life, and I'm trying to say something. So we have those freedoms to do those things when we're, painting and creating. I would imagine that other other disciplines in art do the same thing. Musicians, storytellers, writers, movie makers. I'm sure they do similar things where maybe, if you're telling someone's story, maybe this event and that event happened at different times, but maybe it makes sense to the story to merge them together. Or sometimes maybe it makes sense in a story to state something that happened um, later in the timeline, a little bit earlier. So the reason I'm saying this is because what I want to say is you have creative freedom in your work. You can do what you want to do with your work, and you can tell your story the way you want to tell it. And doing that is going to make your work unique. Creating unique artwork isn't about necessarily having a specific style. That does happen over time if you continue to work. But the most important thing is to really just tell your story. And when you're telling your story in your work, individuals are going to connect with it because people have experienced similar things. So I'm still working on that stove, just trying to flesh that stove out and, make it interesting um, in conjunction with the foreground of the painting, which is basically the still life. The other thing that I would like to say about this painting is that you can see things are in multiple perspectives, um, somewhat like cubism, because the table and the perspective in relation to the still lives, those perspectives are on two different planes. And again, that's that, creativity thing that we can do to just sort of play with the composition and to make people think. So, when people look at it, there might be some oddities that they see, but those oddities are intentional. I understand that if there were a bowl sitting on top of the table, that you might actually be able to peer down into the bowl and see it at that angle. But for the sake of this composition, I didn't want to do that. So yeah, it's really important to, just really be yourself in your work and be creative. And I just want to stress that as we go along. I've been painting for, quite some time now, and I've learned a lot through that process. I've definitely been painting over 10 years, and I've been drawing basically my whole life. So this is something that's learned. And as I'm finishing this painting up, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a few days to dry. With using that medium, I use liquid medium. It will dry quicker than if I were just putting the paint onto the canvas. So I'm going to give it 3 or 4 days to dry, and then I'm going to varnish the painting. And those colors that you see that are extremely vibrant are going to be even more vibrant and more rich. And I like to really turn the intensity up on the color because I believe that in the way that I express myself, that turning up the intensity of the color allows me to pull in the viewer and to make them interested in the work. And then after they're pulled in by the vibrancy of the color, then they can start seeing the composition and they can start trying to figure out what I'm saying or what the story is, or, what the atmosphere is in the painting. So just continue to work, continue to, create, and continue to have an open mind of learning. The way that we improve as artists is by learning and by not being closed minded and being open to new forms of expression and new ideas. So right now in the painting, I'm working on the walls in the background, and I'm really trying to brighten them up and create a more vibrant light source towards the top of the painting, so that the individual who's looking at it realizes that there's a light that's shining in from the window into the kitchen, so you can see the objects represented. Now, it looks like I'm going into some of those bowls, and I am really trying to refine them and define them a little bit further. But at the same time, I want this painting to have a feeling of abstraction. And when you look at those main subjects, you do see bowls, vases, and pictures, but you also just see a composition and color, rhythm, movement, and harmony. So I've got a little bit of a greenish, yellowish tone on my brush right now, and I'm working on the stove, the heater back there, trying to further define that ellipse and really just finish this painting out. And I'm really excited to show this painting at my show coming up, and I hope that people are intrigued by it and are interested and ask me questions about it. This piece will actually be framed, and I look forward to, when I have all of my work hung up, creating a video and showing you all the show as a whole and all of the things that I've been working on. Right now, I believe I'm going to have close to 40 pieces in the show, so I'm excited about it, and I thank you for checking this video out and listening to me as I'm working. I hope that you have a great day. Please like, please comment, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.